I recently played the 45-minute demo of Batman Arkham Shadow at Gamescom, and as someone who's never played any of the Batman games before, I had pretty low expectations, but by the end of this demo, I was almost in tears because of how good it is. Like, I am convinced that in a few years from now, when we're looking back and wondering what was the moment that changed it all for VR, I really think that Batman Arkham Shadow is going to be what we pinpoint as the pivotal moment for VR. Let's start with the platforms that the Batman Arkham Shadow is on, or shall I say the platforms that it's not on. So as you know, Batman Arkham Shadow is only available in VR. When this was first announced, there were so many people that are not in VR that were very upset by this announcement because they have been waiting a very long time for a new Batman game in the Arkham series, and now they finally get an announcement and it's VR only. What? And not only that, but this game is also only available on the Quest 3. It is not available on the Quest 2 or any older platforms. Like, that's a little bit crazy, making a game like this so exclusive. But I think I have an idea of what's going on here. So there's been this rumor that there's going to be a new headset coming out this fall. Everyone's calling it the Quest 3 Lite. My theory is that Batman Arkham Shadow is actually going to come out with that headset, like bundled together, just like Asgard's Wrath 2 with Quest 3. So why is it important that this game is 1, VR only, 2, only available on the Quest 3 and potentially the Quest 3 Lite, and 3, being potentially bundled? Again, I'm just making this up. I have no idea if that's actually the case. But this is what I'm thinking. Now, why is that important? I really think that Batman Arkham Shadow is actually going to bring people to VR in ways that we've never seen before, but only if this game is actually good. If this game is actually good, 1, it will bring all of the Batman Arkham fans that don't have a VR headset to all of a sudden buy a VR headset. And then 2, anyone that has an older headset, Quest 2 or older, it's going to make them want to buy the newer headset to be able to get access to this game, meaning that if there's less people on older headsets, VR devs no longer have to support older headsets. They can now make higher quality games for all of us because most people will be on the Quest 3 or newer. Right. But all of this theory is contingent upon if this game is actually any good. So is it any good? Is it any good? Like, oh my gosh, it is so good. It is so good. Again, this is coming from someone that has never played any Batman games, but also someone that doesn't normally like any like combat or what I would call like aggressive games, because usually they make me stressed. Like, I don't want to be chased. I don't want to be like attacked. Like, I've already had a stressful day. I want to like relax, unwind, and feel good after a long day of work. But man, we gotta talk about the combat of this game. The combat is so top notch. Like, I think the only way I can explain it is that Camouflage, who is the developer for this game, has previously also developed Iron Man VR and Republic. They were so intentional about how they made this game. They really did not shy away from using VR mechanics, but not just like, I feel like that's kind of almost like diminishing what they actually did here. It's not just using VR mechanics, but really optimizing the game for VR mechanics. So first, I'm sure you've all seen in the trailers by now that when you punch as Batman, it actually propels you forward and like zooms you to the enemy. That feeling of just like that feeling of like punching and all of a sudden like being like you're right there, it's a really cool feeling, and oddly not nauseating in any way whatsoever. I don't know how they did this magic, but like it just feels so good. You're just like, oh, I am so powerful, I'm so strong, I'm freaking Batman.
I am vengeance. I am the night.
I'm freaking Batman. So anyway, so you whoosh into there, and then like there's all these different like indicators that show up on your screen of how you're supposed to fight. So sometimes it's like 1, 2, 3 punch, or sometimes you have to like bang on top of their head, or other times you have to do like left hook, right hook, or sometimes you have to block, you're like stop, or like you block with your cape to the sides. There's like all these different movements that you can do as Batman, and it tells you like on your screen like what you're supposed to do, and it kind of almost slows down the enemies a little bit. and you're just like bam, 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 whoa, bam, bam. Like it just feels incredible. It really like combat was captured so well, and you cannot experience what you experience in this game, in this platform, anywhere else. Like you could not experience this playing a flat screen game like at all. So yeah, I thought that the combat was like intuitive, challenging, and powerful. Actually, the whole demo, the way that it flowed, there was like, you know, there was like partial, like there was a little bit of exploration, then all of a sudden you got into a little bit of combat, and they introduced you to like a couple of moves, and then you do some other stuff. And then again, you get into another combat sequence where again, they teach you a little bit more moves. Like they never made it feel overwhelming. You always felt so good, and like you were really like in control because obviously you're Batman. So I just think that the way that this game was designed was just so thoughtful and considerate of the fact that you have to be Batman. So you should never at any point feel like you're struggling. You should always feel really good, but it should never feel like it's easy, because again, Batman is Batman, right? It's not supposed to be easy. Yeah, and I really think that this is like a golden standard of how VR games should be developed. And if like, you know, and VR developers who play this game will all of a sudden be like, oh crap, this is the standard that we have to live up to. And this is like the quality that we really need to be aspiring to when creating a VR game. I think that this game is going to attract like 3 types of audiences. 1, obviously the Batman fans, and then 2, anyone that likes like, you know, like combat, action, fighting games. I guess maybe 4 types of audiences, because the 3rd one would be anyone that like really wants to get a workout. Oh my gosh, I was sweating so much playing this, but it felt good because I was just beating up all the bad guys. And then 4, anyone that's like ever played Beat Saber or played an instrument or has played some sort of sport, you know what it's like to get into this flow state, right? When you're like almost this meditative state where you're like doing all these actions. Well, with Batman Arkham Shadow, when you're doing this combat sequence, again, it's like it'll tell you all the different movements you're supposed to do, and it's pretty like diverse and varied. But when you're like getting into these combat sequences, you go into this like flow state. You're just like, I don't know, you're almost like a ballerina, just like, anyway, it was so good. And that's another thing I wanted to point out, is that like I honestly thought that this game was not going to be for me, but there's so many layers of different like elements in this game that there really is something for everyone. And I think usually with VR games, it has just like one focal element, like, you know, maybe it's like a hack and slash type of game and that's all there is to it. But the fact that like this game has so many different elements, diverse type of movements, different types of mechanics. Sorry, I just thought about like how at one point you have to like flip upside down and sneak attack the enemies. Anyway, it was so good. The complexity of this game and the diversity of the gameplay, while still feeling really good and intuitive and easy for the player themselves, it's just really setting the bar for the types of games that we should now be getting in VR, because now it's done. Like the example of what a VR game should look like is here, and now that everyone can see what we deserve in the VR space, I think we will start to get more of this. Another game that I really thought was just so good in terms of like demonstrating how good VR is for gaming was Behemoth. If you remember, I played it over the summer. I did the demo of it at in LA. That game was so good because again, they did not shy away from using VR mechanics. A lot of VR games currently like shy away from using VR mechanics because they want to be beginner friendly or like don't want to be too overwhelming or confusing. But Behemoth was like, you're like grappling around and you're like having all these different weapons, and at one point you're even climbing a behemoth with one hand while it's like walking around while like grabbing your sword in your other hand. Like, you know, it was just very complex mechanics that just took full advantage of VR. And I think that this is like an indication of like the types of experiences that we can look forward to in VR, is just games that fully take advantage of all the different things that you can do in VR. And honestly, things that you can only do in VR. This is the reason why games are better in VR, because these are the things you cannot do anywhere else. Recently, I also did post like a Twitter post where I talked about how, we're now going into this like golden era of virtual reality, because when I was at Gamescom, there were just all these different things that I saw that like we're going to see a mass of people entering the VR space because of what I witnessed. So one was, of course, Batman Arkham Shadow, just so freaking good. And I do really genuinely think that it's going to bring a lot of people to the VR space. Two, potentially getting that like Quest 3 Lite coming out, I think will bring a lot of new people to the VR space, and specifically to really good, high quality VR space. But also at Gamescom, I did try the World of Warcraft 4D demo. That was another one that almost made me cry. Honestly, like it was exceptional. So you sat on this, I don't know, this like moving seat thing, which simulates you like flying on a dragon. And then there's like different fans blowing at you, and you have like the headset on, and you're just like flying through World of Warcraft. And, there's been VR 4D demos before, and you're kind of like, yeah, that was pretty good, I guess. But like, this World of Warcraft demo was not just pretty good, I guess. It was so good, like very high quality. Again, another thing that almost made me cry because of how good it is. And I was just so excited to see, like, obviously World of Warcraft has a lot of like fans that are not in VR, and like that line to try that demo like wrapped around, like it was such a long line. And I was just so happy to see that all of these people that I'm pretty sure that are not part of the VR space getting to experience this demo with a VR headset. Yeah, it made me really happy. I feel like there's a lot of people that are going to try that, and they're going to think, oh my gosh, I finally get it. Holy crap, this is VR now. I thought VR was like a cardboard, but no, we're like in a new era. And I also think that in the future, when we have things like this, like in our homes, it is over. It is over for everything else, because everyone's just going to see how superior these types of immersive experiences are over literally any other gaming experience that I could think of. Oh, and I did want to mention as well, like there was the Home of XR, which was like a mega booth for all like the top VR companies, where everyone was showing their demos, and like, man, all of the demos that these VR studios were showing were just top notch. Like, I really think we're so past the tech demo stuff. And in order to make it now in the VR industry, you really gotta make like really high quality games, especially with a lineup like Behemoth and Batman Arkham Shadow. So that was just really exhilarating to see. And the other thing that's happening in the space, shameless plug, is at Flat2VR Studios, we are officially porting titles to the VR space. So the first 4 titles we're doing is Trombone Champ and Flattened, which releases this fall, Wrath of Ruin, Flat Out, and RoboQuest. And like, we have no plans on slowing down or stopping anytime soon. Like, we're full-fledged ahead, and it like we're getting really great reception. And so I really think what we're doing with the Flat2VR Studios is becoming a bridge for the non-VR gamers into the VR space, because now like these non-VR gamers have like, we're taking their favorite games in flat screen and bring it to VR, and like, oh shoot, I can play my favorite game immersively. Like, I could just jump into my favorite game. Between all of these things, I do genuinely think that we are now entering what I'm gonna call the golden era of VR. And I think we're going to see a massive shift in the space with a ton of new people entering the VR space. And I'm just so optimistic about this industry. So I don't know, what do you think? Like, do you think that like all of these things that I just talked about is enough to make VR go mainstream? Or do you think that there needs to be more things that have to happen in order for us to go mainstream? All right, that's all from me today. If you want to hear more of my thoughts, make sure you subscribe, follow me on Twitter, X, LinkedIn, Instagram, wherever you want to follow me. Yeah, otherwise I will see you next time. Goodbye.